It feels like every day there's a new headline about some amazing new drug or therapy.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about the drugs themselves, the molecules they're discovering.
Right.
It's the really incredible ways that they're figuring out how to actually deliver those therapies, get them into the body where they need to be.
It's mind-blowing, the pace of it all.
Yeah.
And I imagine for a lot of people out there, trying to keep up with the science behind it,
Oh, for sure.
it can feel like drinking from a fire hose.
Absolutely.
Well, that's where we come in.
That's right.
Think of this as your cheat sheet, your rapid download of the really essential stuff.
Exactly. And today we're not dissecting the latest blockbuster drug,
Right?
We're diving into the really ingenious science of how those drugs are formulated and delivered, how they actually get to where they need to go in the body.
So it's not just about what the drug is, it's about how we get it there.
That's it.
And today we're doing something a little bit special.
A little different.
We're taking a trip back to season 7,
Yeah, a little retrospective.
specifically focusing on the advancements we explored in formulation and drug delivery.
Precisely a look back to see where we're headed.
Think of it as the essential takeaways from season 7, all wrapped up in one neat little package.
But it's not just a walk down memory lane, is it?
No.
It's about understanding how those scientific leaps we discussed in getting drugs into the system are now influencing the regulations that govern them, what happens once they're approved and on the market, and ultimately the future of how we design medicines.
It's about making those connections, right?
Exactly.
And seeing the big picture.
So we're going to be extracting the most significant insights from the season, revealing how these intricate details, these seemingly complex technical aspects, have very real, tangible, real-world consequences.
It's about those aha moments
Exactly.
where things suddenly click into place.
Precisely the understanding that might not have been apparent in those individual discussions.
Right. And season 7 really was packed full of exciting advancements, wasn't it?
It really was.
We explored everything from, the incredibly small world of nanoparticles to really sophisticated strategies for getting drugs past tough barriers like the skin.
Absolutely. It was a really comprehensive season.
Okay, let's jump in.
Let's do it.
When we think about the big breakthroughs in formulation from season 7, where should we start?
Well, a really fundamental area we covered, and one that's absolutely crucial in the early stages of drug development, something we actually touched on way back in season 3, is the significance of a drug's solid-state properties.
Right, and that might sound kind of basic, but it's actually incredibly important, isn't it?
It really is. You might recall us discussing how a drug substance can exist in different physical forms, like various crystal structures or different sized particles.
It's like how graphite and diamonds are both made of carbon, right?
Exactly.
But their structures give them completely different properties.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the same principle applies to drug molecules. These different solid forms can have a profound effect on a drug's stability. So how long it remains effective, its solubility, how well it dissolves in the body, and ultimately its bioavailability, the extent to which it's absorbed and is available to have an effect.
Right, it's not enough for a drug to just exist. It has to exist in the right form to actually work in the body.
Precisely. And as we discussed in season 3, even seemingly minor variations in crystal structure or particle size can present major challenges in formulating a drug and can even impact how easily it can be manufactured consistently.
So it's like a recipe.
Yes.
If you change the ingredients even slightly,
Even a little bit.
it can completely change the end result.
Exactly. You can end up with a cake instead of a cookie.
Right.
Or a souffle instead of a pancake. It's all about understanding and controlling those fundamental properties.
So controlling a drug's crystal structure is like controlling the fundamental building blocks of how it behaves in the body.
Exactly. It impacts everything from how long it sits on the shelf to how effectively it treats a disease.
So really nailing down these solid-state properties right from the beginning is absolutely essential.
It's fundamental.
What other formulation innovations from season 7 really stand out?
Well, we dedicated quite a bit of time to liposomes.
Liposomes, those tiny little bubbles of fat.
Well, they're microscopic spheres constructed from fat-like molecules.
Okay.
And what's particularly interesting about them is their potential to greatly enhance the oral bioavailability of drugs, whether those drugs are oily or water-soluble.
Right. So whether the drug itself likes to dissolve in oil or in water,
Exactly.
liposomes can help it get absorbed better when taken by mouth.
Precisely. And they're biodegradable and biocompatible, which is important.
Right. So they break down naturally in the body and don't cause harm.
Exactly. So how do they work?
Yeah. How do they achieve that enhanced absorption?
Well, their structure is really key. They have this double layer of lipids that allows them to interact very favorably with the mucosal lining of the gut.
So they basically blend in.
In a way, yes. They can also form mixed micelles with bile salts, which are naturally present in the digestive system.
And bile salts help to break down fats.
Right, exactly. And that aids in dissolving those more challenging lipophilic drugs, the ones that like to dissolve in oil.
Ah, so it's like a team effort.
Precisely.
The liposomes and the bile salts work together.
To help the drug get absorbed.
And there's even research suggesting that liposomes could be useful for targeting the lymphatic system,
There is, which is very promising.
so potentially delivering drugs directly to the immune system.
Precisely.
That's pretty amazing.
It is very exciting. But we also discussed some hurdles with getting liposomes to work effectively when taken orally, didn't we?
We did. There were some challenges, weren't there?
Yes, their stability in the gastrointestinal tract is a primary concern.
Right. It's a pretty harsh environment down there.
It is very acidic and full of enzymes that can break things down.
So how do you protect these delicate little liposomes?
Well, researchers are developing some really ingenious solutions. One strategy is to incorporate stabilizing lipids directly into the liposome structure.
Ah, so reinforcing them from within.
Precisely. Another approach is to coat them with protective polymers.
Like giving them a suit of armor.
Exactly. And then there are even more complex systems like double liposomes or proliposomes and bilosomes.
Those sound pretty high-tech.
They are. They involve multiple layers and compartments that can help to further enhance stability and control the release of the drug.
So it's like giving these tiny drug carriers a protective suit for their journey through the digestive system.
A very good analogy.
And in Season 7, we also explored formulations designed specifically for inhalation.
Yes, we did specifically dry powder inhalers or DPIs and pressurized metered dose inhalers or PMDIs.
Right, those are the devices that people use to deliver medication directly to their lungs.
Exactly, for conditions like asthma or COPD.
And these delivery systems are surprisingly complex, aren't they?
They are much more so than you might think.
You know, I always just imagined it was like spraying a fine mist.
Well, it is, but achieving the precise particle size required for the drug to effectively reach deep into the lungs, that's a real challenge.
Right, because if the particles are too big,
They'll get trapped in the upper airways.
and if they're too small,
They might just be exhaled.
so it's a real Goldilocks situation.
It is. You need the particles to be just the right size. And then there's ensuring consistent dosing with each inhalation.
Right, because you don't want people getting too much or too little medication with each puff.
Exactly. And then there are factors like powder flow in DPIs or the behavior of propellants in PMDIs that all have to be carefully controlled.
So a lot of engineering goes into these devices.
A great deal.
Fascinating. And then we shifted gears a bit in Season 7 and talked about the challenge of getting drugs through the skin transdermal drug delivery.
Yes, that's an area with a lot of potential, but also some significant obstacles.
I imagine so.
We discussed how excipients, the inactive ingredients in a drug formulation, can play a crucial role by inducing localized changes in the outermost layer of the skin, the stratum corneum.
That's the tough outer layer that acts as a barrier.
Exactly. And the objective is to identify chemical permeation enhancers, or CPEs.
Right. CPEs?
Yes, these are excipients that can temporarily loosen that barrier.
So it's like finding a key to unlock the skin.
In a way, yes. And the ideal CPE needs to have a very specific set of characteristics.
So it's not just any old chemical.
No, it needs to be pharmacologically inert, meaning it doesn't have its own medicinal effect.
Right, so it's not adding any extra drug to the mix.
Exactly. It should have a predictable and reversible action.
So you know how it's going to behave.
Precisely, and that the effect is temporary.
And it needs to be safe.
Absolutely. It can't cause any irritation or toxic effects.
So finding these ideal CPEs is kind of like a holy grail.
In a way, yes. The search is ongoing, and it's a significant area of research.
Which is why the range of drugs currently suitable for transdermal delivery is still somewhat limited.
Exactly. We're still looking for those perfect keys to unlock the skin's potential.
Well, hopefully we'll get there. And we also briefly touched upon the use of colloids in drug delivery.
We did. Colloids are essentially very fine particles suspended within a liquid.
Okay, so like a really fine mist.
In a way, yes. And they offer another versatile strategy for drug delivery.
And we're talking about things like nanoparticles here?
Yes, nanoparticles are one example. They can be specifically engineered to possess properties that are ideal for targeted drug delivery or for enhancing the solubility of poorly soluble drugs.
So it's all about manipulating these tiny particles to behave in very specific ways.
Precisely.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So clearly a lot of innovation happening on the formulation front.
Absolutely, a very dynamic field.
Now let's pivot a bit and talk about advancements in how we actually deliver these formulated drugs. What were some of the key takeaways there from Season 7?
Well, a major area of ongoing development is modified release formulations for oral administration.
Modified release. So that means controlling when and how the drug is released.
Exactly. Instead of the drug being released all at once, leading to a spike and then a drop in concentration, these formulations are designed to release the drug more gradually over a sustained period.
Right, so it's like a slow and steady release
Precisely.
rather than a burst all at once.
Exactly. And this can have a number of benefits.
Like what?
Well, for one, it can result in more consistent drug levels in the bloodstream.
Right, so instead of having these big peaks and valleys,
Exactly.
you get a more stable level.
Precisely. And that can translate to less frequent dosing.
So instead of having to take a pill 3 times a day,
You might only need to take it once a day.
which could lead to better patient adherence.
Exactly. People are more likely to stick to their medication regimen if it's simpler and more convenient.
Right, because no one wants to be constantly reminded to take their pills.
Precisely. And modified release can also help to reduce side effects.
How?
Well, by avoiding those high peaks in drug concentration, you can minimize the risk of adverse effects that might be associated with those high levels.
So it's a win-win.
It can be. And all these formulation advancements we've been discussing, they're ultimately aimed at achieving very specific pharmacokinetic profiles for the drug in the body.
Pharmacokinetics, that's the study of how the body processes a drug.
Exactly. It's all about understanding how the drug is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and eliminated.
Right, ADME.
Precisely. And this connects directly back to some fundamental pharmacokinetic principles we explored in earlier seasons. For instance, in season 5, we discussed how impaired kidney function can significantly impact how drugs are eliminated from the body.
Right, if a patient's kidneys aren't working efficiently,
The drug might remain in their system for an extended period.
which could be dangerous.
It could potentially lead to toxicities.
So that directly influences how we need to formulate and dose drugs for those patients.
Absolutely. And similarly, in season 2, we took a deep dive into drug metabolism.
Drug metabolism. That's the process by which the body breaks down and eliminates drugs.
Precisely. It primarily occurs in the liver.
And often involves those cytochrome P450 enzymes.
Yes, like CYP3A4 and CYP3A5.
Right. CYP enzymes. They're kind of like the body's drug detoxification system.
A good way to think about it. And understanding which specific enzymes a drug interacts with is vital because variations in these enzymes between individuals can significantly alter how quickly they process medications,
So some people might break down a drug very quickly,
while others might break it down much more slowly.
which could affect how well the drug works.
Absolutely. So we need to consider all these factors when we're designing formulations.
It's really complex, isn't it?
It is, but it's fascinating.
Okay, so we've seen these really exciting innovations in how we formulate and deliver drugs. How do these advancements then intersect with the regulatory world and what happens after a drug receives approval and is on the market?
That's where the practical implications really come into focus.
Right, because it's not enough to just have a great idea. You have to be able to actually get it approved and out to patients.
Exactly. And these complex formulations and delivery technologies necessitate a very thorough consideration by regulatory agencies.
So they really scrutinize these new approaches.
Absolutely. They need to ensure that the products are safe, effective, and manufactured to the highest standards.
And a concept that was a recurring theme in Season 7, and is absolutely central to this discussion, is quality by design, or QBD.
Yes, QBD is all about building quality into the product from the outset based on robust scientific evidence and a comprehensive understanding of potential risks.
So it's a more proactive approach to drug development.
Exactly, rather than just testing for quality at the end of the process. QBD emphasizes understanding and controlling all the factors that can influence quality throughout the entire life cycle of the product.
And we discussed how a thorough understanding of polymorphism, those different solid forms of a drug we talked about earlier, is absolutely critical for conducting effective QBD-based risk assessments.
Precisely because if an unexpected crystal form emerges during manufacturing or storage, it could completely alter the drug's properties and its performance in patients.
Right, so you need to know what you're dealing with.
Exactly. And QBD is about anticipating those potential risks and putting controls in place to mitigate them.
It's like a more holistic approach to drug development.
Exactly. It's about understanding the entire system and how all the pieces fit together.
And then there's dissolution testing, which we discussed in Season 5 when we explored the development of solid oral dosage forms.
Dissolution testing might seem like a relatively straightforward test, simply observing how quickly a tablet or capsule dissolves.
Right.
But it's actually a vital tool for ensuring consistency between different batches of the same drug product.
So it's like a quality control check.
Precisely. And it can also serve as an early indicator of any changes in the formulation that might affect how the drug behaves once it's in the body.
So if a tablet suddenly starts dissolving much faster or slower than it should,
That could be a sign that something has changed in the formulation.
and that could affect how the drug is absorbed.
Exactly.
And if you can establish a reliable in vitro in vivo correlation, or IVIVC, that's a highly valuable outcome, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is indeed highly desirable.
Because it means that the results of an in-lab dissolution test can reliably predict how the drug will be absorbed and behave in a living organism,
Exactly. It allows the in vitro test to serve as a surrogate for in vivo behavior.
which can potentially reduce the reliance on extensive bioequivalence studies in humans.
Precisely. And speaking of bioequivalence, that's another really critical area.
Bioequivalence, that's the concept of demonstrating that two different formulations of the same drug deliver the drug to the body in a comparable way.
Exactly.
And as we discussed in Season 7 and is outlined in regulations like CFR Title 21, Part 320, demonstrating comparable bioavailability between different formulations of the same drug or even between different production batches is absolutely essential. So if a pharmaceutical company makes a change to the formulation of an existing drug,
They'll likely need to conduct studies to show that the new version delivers the drug to the body in a way that's comparable to the original.
right, so it's not enough to just change the recipe.
Exactly. You need to demonstrate that the change doesn't affect how the drug is absorbed and behaves in the body.
And then we have stability studies.
Yes, stability studies are crucial for determining the shelf life of a drug product and for ensuring that it maintains its required quality attributes throughout its intended life cycle.
Right, because no one wants a medication that loses its potency or degrades before it can even be used by the patient.
Precisely. And regulatory submissions invariably require comprehensive stability protocols that detail the specific storage conditions, the time points at which the product will be tested, and the acceptance criteria it must meet at each of those points.
So these studies are really important for ensuring the quality and safety of drug products.
Absolutely. And finally, let's consider the post-marketing phase.
Post-marketing, so that's after the drug has already been approved and is available to patients.
Exactly. Even after a drug has received regulatory approval, the choices made in formulation and delivery continue to have important implications.
So the story doesn't end once the drug is on the market.
Not at all. Ensuring consistent product quality and performance in real-world use, particularly for more complex formulations, can present ongoing challenges.
So it's an ongoing process of monitoring and evaluation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We discussed the importance of having robust systems for handling any complaints about the drug product that might arise, and the detailed record-keeping requirements that are mandated by regulations like CFR Title 21, Part 211.
So it's about being prepared to address any issues that might come up.
Exactly, and having systems in place to track and investigate those issues.
It sounds like these exciting advancements in formulation and delivery, while offering tremendous benefits, also introduce significant layers of complexity to both the regulatory approval process and the ongoing monitoring of drug products after they reach the market.
They do indeed, but it's a necessary complexity.
Right, because ultimately it's all about ensuring the safety and efficacy of these new medicines.
Exactly. And the insights we gain from these advancements, the challenges we encounter and ultimately overcome are precisely what's fueling the next wave of innovation in how we design pharmaceutical products.
So how are these lessons learned from the past shaping the future of drug development?
We're seeing a very clear trend towards the development of more sophisticated drug delivery systems.
More sophisticated in what way?
Well, the overarching goal is to improve the efficacy of treatments, to reduce unwanted side effects, and ultimately to enhance patient compliance.
So it's about making treatments more effective, safer, and easier to use.
Exactly. We're talking about things like longer-acting injectable formulations that reduce the frequency of injections, or even smart pills that can release their payload at a specific location within the digestive tract.
So it's about targeting the drug more precisely.
Exactly. Getting it to where it needs to be in the body with minimal side effects.
And these advancements are closely intertwined with the fundamental principles of pharmaceutical process development, an area we explored in depth in Season 4 and revisited in Season 7.
Absolutely. A deep understanding of the critical quality attributes, or CQAs, of a drug product, those specific properties that are essential for its safety and its ability to produce the desired therapeutic effect, and the critical process parameters, or CPPs, the variables within the manufacturing process that can influence those CQAs, is absolutely paramount.
And this is where sophisticated tools like design of experiments, or DOE, come into play.
Precisely, DOE allows us to methodically study how different process parameters interact with each other and to identify the optimal operating conditions that will consistently produce a high-quality product.
It's like fine-tuning the manufacturing process.
Exactly. And we're also observing a growing interest and adoption of continuous manufacturing processes.
Continuous manufacturing, so that's different from the traditional batch processing,
Exactly. Rather than producing drugs in discrete batches, continuous manufacturing involves an integrated process that runs uninterrupted.
which can potentially improve both efficiency and the consistency of quality control.
Precisely, it's a more streamlined and efficient way to manufacture medicines.
That sounds like a real step forward.
It is. And finally, the increasing and evolving role of modeling and simulation, something we touched upon in both Season 4 and Season 7, is becoming increasingly crucial.
Modeling and simulation, so that's using computer models to predict how a drug will behave.
Exactly. These powerful computational tools allow us to predict how a drug product will perform in the body and to optimize both the formulation itself and the delivery system before we even proceed to large-scale manufacturing or extensive clinical trials.
So it's a way to front-load the development process.
Precisely. We can identify and address potential problems early on before they become costly or time-consuming to fix.
That sounds like a very smart approach,
It is, and it has the potential to significantly streamline drug development.
which ultimately benefits everyone.
Absolutely.
This has been a really insightful recap of Season 7.
It's been a pleasure.
It's fascinating to see how all these seemingly disparate pieces of information connect and point towards the future of pharmaceutical development.
It's all interconnected.
So looking ahead, what can our listeners anticipate in upcoming deep dives?
Well, we'll be continuing to explore critical areas that really build upon the groundwork we've covered in Season 7. We plan to delve into the crucial world of compliance, likely with a focus on good manufacturing practices or GMPs.
GMPs.
Yeah.
Those are the regulations that govern the manufacturing of drug products.
Exactly. And we'll be exploring what it takes to consistently ensure the quality and safety of drug products throughout their entire life cycle, from raw materials to the finished product reaching the patient.
So a really deep dive into the manufacturing process.
Precisely. And we also intend to examine the concept of real-world effectiveness, looking at how drugs actually perform once they're being used by patients in everyday settings.
Right, because clinical trials can only tell us so much.
Exactly.
It's important to see how drugs actually work in the real world.
Precisely. And this involves the important fields of pharmacovigilance and the analysis of post-market data.
So keeping track of how drugs are performing once they're out in the market.
Exactly. And of course, we'll continue to keep a close watch on evolving trends within the pharmaceutical industry, including the exciting possibilities of personalized medicine and the emergence of innovative new therapeutic modalities.
Personalized medicine, so tailoring treatments to individual patients.
Precisely. And new therapeutic modalities, things like gene therapy and cell therapy.
That's some really cutting-edge stuff.
It is a very exciting time to be in this field.
It sounds like we'll continue to follow the entire journey of a medicine.
From that initial spark of scientific discovery all the way through to its impact on the lives of patients.
Absolutely. It's a constantly evolving and learning process.
It is.
Well, this has been a truly illuminating look back at the key advancements of Season 7 and a fascinating glimpse into what lies ahead. So to leave you with a final thought, the remarkable progress we're seeing in drug delivery is unlocking incredibly exciting possibilities for how we treat diseases. But the true impact of these cutting-edge technologies will depend on our collective ability to consistently translate them into safe and effective treatments that make a real difference in the lives of patients. What do you see as the biggest remaining hurdles we need to overcome to fully realize this potential? It's something to consider until our next deep dive. Thanks for being with us.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Until next time.
See you then.